Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should.
My guest is EveAnna Manley, co-founder of Manley Labs. Was that what we would?
That's accurate.
Okay. So I do want to talk about Manley Labs, and I want to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I want to first set the Wayback Machine and just get into a little bit of your history. I'm not sure if are you a college dropout or are you?
I'm an Ivy League.
Are you an Ivy League? Okay, I'm a college dropout, so I'm
proud of that.
Okay, because I know that you basically kind of connected with what you do now, like while you were on hiatus from school. Is that right?
I took a semester off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but you actually did go back.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Against
I'm
David
impressed.
Manley's protests. He wanted me to quit Columbia and just pick up at Cal Poly or something and get my degree out here. I'm like, hell no. I got into Columbia.
You don't give that up.
I've only got 3 semesters left. I'm going to finish that out for sure.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
no way.
So you took a hiatus from Columbia for a year. You came out here and you met up with a wacky father and son team who were running a company that was not necessarily what you had in mind when you came out here looking for work, right?
I was actually inspired one day in class with Bill Graham, whose son was in my class, and brought his dad in to teach a music class that day to explain to us how the music industry worked. And he had this famous 5-fingered, your artist and your producer and your engineers and your promoters and all this, and was explaining the players in the music industry. And I was like, whoa, that sounds intriguing. And my original plan was to drive up to San Francisco to find Bill Graham Presents and try to talk myself into some kind of job. That was my plan. I wish I got sidetracked here in LA and then pursued on with the vacuum tube things, but I wish I had gotten the chance to re-meet Bill Graham and thank him for the inspiration at least.
Yeah.
Because that one day changed my life, right?
Yeah. Oh, I had the good fortune to thank him once, and I totally understand because the guy was tremendously underrated and kind of verbally abused by a lot of people, but he really did change.
You could dish it out too, from what I understood.
Oh yeah, he was a total New Yorker, no question about it. So you kind of really didn't have tech in mind as much as you had record industry, live performance, music industry.
I didn't really
right?
know. I mean, I loved working with my hands. I worked at a picture framing shop in Atlanta when I was in high school and during college breaks. And I also, another job I had, my first job in the summers was working for my high school doing a campus-wide physical inventory, including, counting there's 25 desks in this room and there's a pull-down map and there's a globe.
Captain Meticulous.
Yeah, and then doing the data entry into very primitive computer systems in the early 80s, and doing all the data entries so that they would have a roster to present for insurance purposes, right? So that, and little did I know that skill I learned, or adherence to meticulous data entry would actually be very important in my later career.
It's funny, all the stuff we pick up that kind of makes us who we are that we never expected. I'm never going to use this.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know. And I'm still on everyone's cases about data entry and all that. Don't enter a carriage return there. It messes everything up. That kind of thing.
Okay, so I don't want to get too into the weeds with the details of your career, because your career is fascinating, but I think a lot of people have talked about it already, and the information's out there. But I'm sort of fascinated by a few different points in your career. One of them being this sudden exposure to vacuum tubes and tech and everything like that. I assume you had a musical background too, right?
I was studying music in college.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden
I would have been qualified to be your band director.
Right. So all of a sudden you took a massive left brain turn, so to speak, and you're doing vacuum tubes and stuff like that. And I know that your dad was a co-founder of Ampeg, so it's
Not co-founder. He bought.
Did he buy it? Okay.
He bought the Ampeg company from the founder, Everett Hall.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with the Ampeg thing.
Okay.
We're talking about my stepfather who
Right.
already sold the company before he met my mom, and they got married in 76.
Okay.
So I grew up with the stories, like the glory days of Ampeg and the Rolling Stones using the SVTs, and Dad had met Johnny Cash, and all these stories that were also inspiring. Definitely.
Okay. So I mean, the tech side. What I'm trying to get at is that the tech side was not foreign to you.
Well, see, my music studies were heavy on music theory, which is also very
left brain.
organized.
Yeah.
Methodical,
mathematical. Yep.
You've got rules to follow, and
no parallel fifths.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Let's not introduce any evil tritones into the situation, and you can't resolve it like that. And actually, what all that study did was really crush my creativity. And
Same
when
here.
it came time to, like, okay, go compose something, I'm like, like I couldn't.
Right.
I couldn't even think through it.
And most of those teachers, they were kind of against the idea of, free form, rock and roll music or anything like that, because it didn't adhere to those rules.
Yeah, but the class that I met Bill Graham in was the Roots of Rock and Roll class, which was
Now that's cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it went back to, gospel and, black music in the South,
Mississippi blues,
African roots, and all
That's
that
the stuff.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool class.
That must have been sort of the, almost the antidote to the music theory in a way.
Well, yeah. Definitely. I definitely looked, although I was still so geeky. I love the music theory thing. I was really into it. But see, what I'm trying to say is that music theory and what I was studying, and even art study before that in high school, was all about method and rules, and this is how you do it, and scientifically, this is what you're seeing. You're not, you got to take yourself out of the, the elementary school line drawings, and it's like there's not a line here. This is a plane of blue, and then there's a plane of tan here, right? There's not actually a thick line in between this. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. There's no line there, So that's what I'm trying to say is the kind of studies I was doing, coupled with physics and math and all that, I was very much left brain in all my studies to date.
Okay.
When I got put into this factory.
So it really wasn't that massive a shift for you in terms of consciousness.
No, it was just a different sphere.
Gotcha.
And starting, it's like, oh yeah, I remember Ohm's law. Oh yeah, we studied that in physics. Yeah, okay.
So you were a music and science and math geek in a way.
I was very geeky.
Okay.
But I had this creative element to me that had been kind of stifled by the end of my education just because of all the left brain. So, I mean, the goal is to try to balance left and right brain over time.
Exactly.
So,
which that's just it. Music, for example, is a kind of a mix of those, because without the left brain, you're never going to learn to play an instrument.
That's right.
But without the right brain, you're never going to be able to take that and make it second nature.
Yeah. And I totally had a hard time with improvisation. And, when it was time for me, play a sax solo, I was like, I better write something down. You know what I mean? I was very bad with the spontaneity like that. And I still am.
I get it. So you find yourself in this situation where all of a sudden you've taken your time off, you've gotten your degree, you're back now working for Manley Labs, and
the first company was Vacuum
that's right,
Tube
it was
Logic.
Vacuum Tube Logic.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then father and son split off, and at that point, I assume you guys were involved already, or if you weren't married.
Yeah, we got married in 1990, so we actually started dating, as you would call it. After several months, I had been here in 1989. Then I went back to finish my college degree, and then came back out in 1990. We got married, and then we're cranking with the work.
And I'm assuming that that also, because of, number one, at that point, your position in the company, and number two, just the kind of person you are, you were probably already getting involved with all the different facets of running a business, right? I mean, from the accounting to production to everything else, because I know you and that's how you are.
Yeah, the company at the time was quite young and underdeveloped, or it was like a teenage company, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And for instance, I tell the story all the time. When I was on the production line, and you would self-kit your parts, they would say, "Here, build 10 of these." So you'd take the copy board and count, okay, I need 8 10 ohm 5-watt resistors, and you'd go in the bin and pull out, oh, I'm building 10 boards, okay, I need 80 of these suckers. Right. And then it's like, oh shit, there's only 75. And then you take one and put it on Luke's desk and say, order more of these. And a week later, you'd say, hey, did you order those 10 ohm resistors? And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. So one of my early jobs was, I remembered a purchasing system at that frame shop in Atlanta. And I'm like, here's a Sharpie and a ruler. And I drew out a grid on paper and Xeroxed it and punched 3, holes in it and put it in a binder and said, Luke, this is your new purchasing system.
Ooh.
So that there would be a log.
Yeah.
And also, you would know how much did you pay for that resistor. Yeah. I don't know.
Sounds like the birth of every teenage hippie business in America.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that paper book actually, then when Windows 3.1 came out, and we had Excel, that became an Excel spreadsheet. And then due to the limitations of not being able to work on it together, we later moved that into a FileMaker database. Okay. And then centralized. And these days it's in the cloud and everyone can work on it at the same time.
Sure, but these days it's a lot different from...
It's a lot different from having...
Back when the earth was cooling,
no systems back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... I don't know how much detail I know about this, but I know that basically at a certain point, he went back to France and you suddenly found yourself an impromptu entrepreneur? How did this happen?
I was, basically running the whole company by that time. When we made the split in 1993, and Luke carried on with VTL, and then David and I opened up Manley Labs at the current building we're still at. I was running the company at that time, running the production floor, and David was focused on some of the sales activities and design activities, and I was like managing the production. And
so you were the day-to-day management of it. And
I was doing.
Who was doing the marketing?
I was doing purchasing at that time. I started doing the marketing activities, like learning Quark Express and PageMaker.
Wow.
In those days, and laying out brochures. I think our first Mix magazine ad was in 1995.
Is that when Mix was still newsprint, or had they gone glossy already?
No, it was glossy.
Oh, okay.
It was glossy, and then just participating in the Tech Award activities and all that kind of stuff at that time. So the marketing push, and sales management as well, actually, because the first month that Manley Labs opened, we had thrown David Manley into the Betty Ford Center.
Okay, and so this was part of the reason that he eventually left?
Yeah.
Personal demons, shall we say?
He was a really bad alcoholic, as it turned out. Coupled with what we later learned was undiagnosed bipolar disorder. So he was a handful, you could say.
Oh, boy.
And so, the first day I walked into the Manley building, I actually had taken a month off because his drinking was just so horrible and destructive, and then we did an intervention on him, put him in Betty Ford, and then I walk into this brand new factory and there's people building stuff and machine shops going, and it's like, okay, what orders are you guys working on? And they're like, oh, orders, well, we shipped a pair of those ML10 speaker cabinets last week. I'm like, wow, I guess payroll's coming out of my savings account on Friday, huh? Okay,
So really involuntary, you were an involuntary entrepreneur at that point.
Oh my God.
Just kind of like, here it is, it's all yours now, huh?
Dude, I I had a collection of business cards I'd collected from every trade show. I had a drawer of them, and I just started going through them and typing letters and faxing just various people like, hey, I met you at the AES, in Amsterdam 2 years ago, and we're looking for a German importer, That's what I was doing, to just start trying to pull sales out of thin air.
Trial by fire.
Oh my God, it was frightening.
So was this really was almost like a sudden weight on your shoulders, as opposed to this sort of gradual, like, ooh, it looks like he's not gonna. I mean, this was almost like from one day to the next.
Oh yeah, no, those first 2 weeks, the payroll came out of my savings account. Definitely.
Wow.
It's like we got to get some income happening, make some sales somewhere.
But not just the payroll part of it. I mean, the big thing is all of a sudden you're like. It reminds me of that old Richard Pryor saying about why he stopped drinking because he got tired of waking up going 90.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden,
It was something else, I tell you. And then,
terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, huh?
Yeah, and then as a small company too, you just don't have the bread to just go out and hire a bunch of people to do all these things. So I ended up learning how to do bookkeeping, purchasing, sales, marketing, technical stuff, QC, fixing problems, drafting, even, just everything.
Mm-hmm. Now, I assume that you at least had some sort of a team of people that you could count on a little bit.
There were few chiefs and more Indians, put it that way.
Okay.
So
you didn't really have any like lieutenants to count on or anything like that.
Some, but there were still so many job activities that fell on my shoulder. And if my 52-year-old self could go back and tell my 24-year-old self, it's like, just invest, go find some people and hire them. Mm-hmm. And that scary payroll will take care of itself, and you'll live longer.
Well,
but in my 20s, of course, I had all the energy in the world.
Right. And so you just keep doing it. That kind of segues nicely into something that I wanted to point out. Now, I've known you a little while, and I've seen you through a lot of changes, both personally and in your company. And one thing that I have really kind of admired, as well as been fascinated by, is the fact that you run this big company. You are in touch with everything, and yet you have found a way to have work-life separation.
Not this past year, but
not
in
this past
normal
year. But generally speaking, I mean, you used to take a motorcycle trip to Vietnam every year. You have other interests. You have, in certain ways, time for yourself, and I think that, myself included, I see so many people who start out as entrepreneurs, and it takes them years to figure out that if you don't exhale, you're not going to inhale.
Yeah.
And there's such a balance there. And I think especially having been presented with this sink or swim situation of you're the boss and you're now learning how to do everything. Tell me a little bit about how you finally hit that point where you realize that, okay, I need to keep this under control. I need to find that balance.
Yeah, you don't want to micromanage everyone, or they feel suffocated, and also they're not really able to really help you. And you're still doing everything.
Not only that, but if you've got great people and you micromanage them, they're no longer going to be capable of being great.
That's right. So I am always trying to empower everyone around me to learn. And the other thing, I'm trying to make myself obsolete every day. Mm-hmm. And I get frustrated when things just continually roll up to me. It's like, dude, you know the answer. You've got this. You don't have to ask mommy for permission for this. Like, you've got this. Do it. And that kind of mother figure thing, or where my coworkers sometimes still feel the need to ask permission for this or that. I've got these wonderful people working for me that have my complete trust also, and they're like, 100% honest people.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust that they make good judgment calls and good decisions and are honest all the time also. So I wish that they would continue to do the good jobs that they do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Well, you have to have trustworthy people, and you have to empower people around you.
Yes.
And I try to do that at all times.
And not just trustworthy, but they have to be self-motivated to a certain extent. You know, I mean, I always
Yeah.
used to say that I want people working with me who will come to me and say, not say, what do you want me to do, but rather say something like, you know, here's what I think we should do. You know,
I'm only too happy to
Yeah.
let you do it.
exactly,
you know?
exactly. I think it takes a certain amount of trust, as well as a certain amount of inner peace to be able to let that go.
Yeah.
And to say, okay, so-and-so's got it, you know.
Well, we worked together. You did PR work for me for quite a few years. And after the first couple months, I could see that you're an excellent writer. And I don't need to go in and just grammar check everything. That's number one. You were competent to start with.
And I know I had the grammar chief looking over my stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part is you, my coworker, have to be competent.
Yes.
And own it.
Mm-hmm.
And you were. And so I didn't need to micromanage you.
But you see, that's a bit of an art form too.
But we
The
had a
fact that-
successful
Right.
working relationship for
Absolutely.
many years.
Absolutely. And you and I understood each other.
Yeah.
But I
So
think there are a lot of people who put in your position would not necessarily be able to let go.
it's about getting my ego out of it, right?
It is. It is. And that's something that's very difficult to do. And especially because when it's a business that we have built, we're so attached to every bit of it because we go through all that learning that you were talking about, you know, and then to be able to say, okay, this baby that I have nurtured here, now I'm going to hand it over, you know, and take on the next thing.
It's a
that's not
struggle
easy.
when you're a perfectionist and you've
Yes.
got that problem in your head.
Yes.
And it's a struggle to let go. And but one has to, or else
Yeah.
you're not free. You're a slave to your own company.
Well, and that's true, and that's something that you know, you've always heard the business terminology about whether you work in the company or on the company
Or for the company.
yeah, exactly. And those kind of mental, those are almost their mindsets more than anything else, you know, and whatever you're willing to take on or not. But you've done a really great job of that, and
Thank you, but it is also exhausting.
yeah, no kidding. And then, you know, just staying on top of that because things change, industry changes, you know. I mean, there's always competition, there's always all this other stuff going on.
Oh man, but this past year,
Yeah, how's that been for you?
holy cow, the pro audio business has just exploded. Not just me, but all of my manufacturing peers out there.
Yep.
And I'm kind of blown away.
Well, you know, you work hard enough and eventually you get the rewards, right? I mean,
I
I'm
don't
glad
know.
to see that.
I think like, well, if we had pushed it harder 10 years ago, we could already been at that number. I don't know.
Then what
but-
would you be doing? You know.
I don't know.
But I do think
It's been
interesting.
overwhelming
Yeah.
the whole time.
But you have done some really interesting diversification, you know, with all the other stuff you've been doing and everything. And I think that again, it shows a willingness to back off and let go a little bit.
Do you mean like the licensing bit to UA, to Universal Audio? That's been super lucrative for the company, and they've been
And UA is great. I mean,
they've been
the
an
wonderful folks.
excellent business partner. And the other thing, you know, the first thing we all thought about is like, oh, if we do a plugin, that's going to cannibalize hardware sales, and it turns out
Just the opposite. Yeah.
And it took a few years for that to develop, but what I realize now is, you know, like people don't email me like, what settings should I use for bass guitar on the box, because they've already got the plugin,
Uh-huh.
and then they know they've already been able to fiddle with it in the computer, so then they know where to put the knobs. So it's funny, those questions just went away.
Yeah.
So then what I see is that the plugins are like the demo version of the hardware, and they are the entry level product in the product range, at, let's say, $300 or whatever. And then we have the middle range product, say the Manley Core, and then the top daddy is the Vox Box. And it's a riot that we're selling more of the big expensive products, growing off of that. The plug-in.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's amazing.
Doesn't surprise me because everybody's moving to having their own setups now, out of necessity as well as, understanding what a convenience it is.
Yeah.
And they've already had exposure to the stuff. So, sure, why not?
It's awesome.
Having a good front end is really one of the most important things. So
I'm super proud of that,
Yeah.
That was my first pro audio product after David moved to France. And you asked about that. That was in 1996, so he was off the sauce for 3 years and then went right back on it. And then he's like, I've had enough of America. I hate America. I'm going to Europe where the civilized people are. And he took himself out and moved to France, and then we got divorced. That's how I ended up acquiring the rest of the company, is through the divorce. I bought him out and cashed him out of America, sold off all his recording gear and his boats and pianos and cars and just stuff,
Wow.
and cashed him out.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to basically retire in France.
But I think it's interesting the way that everything sort of fell to you, and you just kind of bring it on. There's more.
Yeah.
And
it was either that or I'm like, if it's too difficult, I'll just bail and go back to Atlanta.
Sure. But you're not that type. You're not wired that way anyway.
I could have taken
Sure, you
over
could
the
have,
picture
yeah.
framing shop there.
Yeah. But like I say, I mean, to me, I think what's fascinating is because I know you, and I know that you are exactly the type to say, okay, cool, challenge. Hey, come on. So that part doesn't surprise me. But what I think is a lesson that a lot of people could benefit from is just watching the way you were able to make that shift from this mentality of just, running everything to, you know what? I need to breathe. I need to take some distance from this. I need to be able to pull myself away for a couple of weeks at a time, go camping or whatever it is, start working on other ventures that maybe don't even have anything to do with audio, stuff that really a lot of people would have a lot of trouble doing, that mind shift of letting go. I think that's been incredibly healthy for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, time once again to kind of rethink how I live, my perspective on stuff. I mean, I think that's so important. And that's stuff that there's a lot of people that never get there.
Thanks. Yeah, after the second divorce, I'm like, well, I can, if I repeat what I did the first time, I hold up. I was like, everyone just stay the hell away from me, And I buried myself in work, and I didn't seek any relationships or anything like that. So I was like, okay, if I repeat that again and, take a break for 10 years again or something, it's like, well, how old am I going to be before?
Yeah.
And then
And what have I learned?
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it was just a big old waste of time.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I was like, you know what? I'm so lucky. I've got the whole world available to me. I can meet anybody.
Yeah.
That's when I discovered for myself that I can, instead of closing up, I can open up. And
yeah, I mean, I watched a tremendous change come over you shortly after that whole thing.
It was.
And you just, not only a different person in that sense, but so much more calm and relaxed, which for somebody like you, who quite honestly is a fairly hyper individual, and it takes one to know one,
Takes one to know one.
Yeah. There's a point at which you have to be able to just go, and, just be able to back off from it.
Yeah.
And that must have been, I mean, I'm sure it was a challenge in a way. Except that you knew you needed it.
Except I knew I needed it. And I decided to do that,
Yeah.
And I really embraced my friends. And I had found like I had kind of holed up when I was married, And I did that even worse the first time I was married too. And it was great getting out of that relationship and discovering all these friends around me again, and becoming closer with all my friends as well and making new friends. And I started a little motorcycle jeans importation company with my best friend JB.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
So we've been bringing in these French motorcycle jeans, and then in the course of marketing those jeans here in Los Angeles, like I've really met so many motorcycle people, like a whole nother community, and it was just wonderful, just meeting all these new people and becoming best friends with a whole different lot of folks.
Yeah, it just widens your circle. You can't just be surrounded by audio people your whole life. Yeah.
Well, you can. But,
Well, you can, yeah, of course.
But
and
then
we
you're
have
missing
been.
out on all the cool motorcycle peeps,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, but
I think that's one thing that really helped me flourish in the last several years was just opening up and embracing all sorts of new friends.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, thanks.
So, last question for you, because you were talking earlier about what you could tell 26-year-old you now. There's a whole new generation coming up that you and I are both involved in supporting and standing behind and everything.
You bet.
Got any advice for the youngins?
Oh man, I'm continually impressed by like our mutual friend Eva Reistad, who's just go getting it.
Yep.
She's, I guess we became friends in the last several years, and I really totally admire her ability to kind of restart as an apprentice and take direction from her bosses or her mentors, and learn that workflow that works for them, and become incredibly proficient and excellent at what she does. It's just amazing. And I think that's what pervades the thought here is you've got to be competent and you have to be excellent at what you do, no matter what age you are, but especially when you're younger. That's how you move forward, is you have to be competent. And then if someone's giving you crap because you're young or you're a chick or whatever else, that's got to go.
Yeah.
But
if you're good at what you do, as you say.
Above all, you have to be good at what you do.
Yeah. And that's a conversation that Eva and I had the other day as well. The idea of, I don't want to hire you because you're a woman,
right,
or because you're not a woman. I want to hire you because you're the best at what you do.
Yeah.
Gender regardless.
That's right.
And that, I think, is what really makes or breaks it, is, be your best and try your best, learn stuff, never be afraid to ask questions, all of those kind of things.
Apologize when you mess it up.
Yep. And take it on and take responsibility and say, okay.
Own it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because every one of those experiences is a learning experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we've all screwed up stuff, and we have to be able to back up and apologize and learn from it. And also, another thing when I'm working with folks, sometimes people think I'm so critical of them all the time. Like maybe I will correct the grammar or a data entry problem or something like that. And it's hard sometimes for me to kind of balance between giving people enough praise where they feel good and being critical of things that aren't going 100% right.
Yes.
Because we're in a very precise and exacting business. If there's one part that's not soldered in that unit, the whole thing doesn't work. Like we're forced in electronics, we're forced to be perfectionists.
Yes.
And our customers are even worse than OCD than we are.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're going to let us know if there's a tiny little scratch on something, or that knob's not lined up right, or whatever it is. So it's we're in a very high demanding job, and in order to improve or to be aware of these little tiny things, yes, I have to be critical about issues and things, and it is kind of a black and white situation because it's science. It's like you can't put the 100 ohm resistor where you need the 100,000 ohm resistor. It ain't gonna work right.
Oops.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
all digits matter.
Yeah.
So, or in bookkeeping, like you can't just leave a digit
Can't move
out.
a decimal point. Yeah, exactly.
It's just not going to work. So that's one thing I struggle with actually is to try to, balance the praise with the criticism.
Sure.
And the criticism, I always intend it to be constructive criticism. Like, let's learn from this,
Yeah. Well, the whole theory of the compliment sandwich, right? You start out with something good, and then you lay in the criticism, and then you end it with something good. It's.
Oh, I thought you meant you put potato chips on the side. The other kind of compliment.
No, that's condiments.
No, I mean, well, then there's condiments.
Yes,
No,
yes.
the compliments or compliments with the I or the E. They're different things.
Yes, exactly.
Grammar nerds of the world.
On that note, EveAnna Manley, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, DK. Nice to chat with you
Been
today.
such a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.